The night was quiet on New Montana. Daniel Harper sat on his porch, drinking coffee and watching the stars. He liked the silence. He liked being alone. After everything he had seen during the war, peace was all he wanted. His farm was small but good. He grew wheat and corn. He raised a few animals. The nearest town was 50 miles away, and that was fine with him. People asked too many questions. They wanted to know about his medals and his scars. Daniel did not want to talk about those things. He was about to go inside when something caught his eye. A bright light streaked across the sky. At first, he thought it was a meteor, but then the light changed direction. It was not a meteor. It was a ship. The ship was falling fast. Fire burned along its hull. Daniel could hear the terrible sound of metal breaking apart. The ship crashed at the edge of his property, maybe half a mile away. The impact shook the ground beneath his feet. Daniel stood frozen for a moment. Part of him wanted to ignore it. Whatever had crashed was not his problem. He had spent years running away from other people's problems. But another part of him, the part that had once been a combat medic, could not walk away. He went inside and grabbed his old rifle. He also took his medical kit. He had not used it in years, but he kept it ready out of habit. Then he got into his truck and drove toward the crash site. The wheat field was burning. Daniel could see the flames rising against the dark sky. He parked his truck at a safe distance and walked the rest of the way on foot. The heat was intense. Pieces of the ship were scattered everywhere. The main body of the ship had carved a deep trench in the earth. It was a small transport vessel, the kind used for short trips between planets. Daniel had seen many ships like this during the war, but this one was different. The design was alien. He approached carefully, keeping his rifle ready. He did not know what he would find inside. Maybe everyone was dead. Maybe it was a trap. He had learned long ago to expect the worst. The ship's door had been blown off during the crash. Daniel climbed inside. The interior was dark and filled with smoke. He turned on the flashlight attached to his rifle and moved forward. That was when he heard the crying dot. It was a child's voice, soft and frightened. Daniel followed the sound to the back of the ship. There, huddled in a corner, he found them. A woman was sitting against the wall, holding a small child in her arms. They were not human. The woman had silvery blue skin and long white hair. Her eyes were large and violet, and they seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. The child looked similar but smaller. Both of them were hurt. The woman had a deep cut on her forehead, and blood the color of silver ran down her face. The child was crying into her mother's chest. The woman looked up at Daniel with terror in her eyes. She tried to move away, but was too weak. "Please," she said in broken Galactic common, "do not hurt us." Daniel lowered his rifle. He had seen many aliens during the war. Some had been enemies. Some had been allies. He had learned not to judge anyone by their appearance. "I am not going to hurt you," he said slowly. "I am a medic. I can help you." The woman stared at him. She did not seem to believe him. "You are human," she said. "Yes." She looked at her child, then back at Daniel. Her body was shaking. "They are coming for us," she whispered. "The Dominion. They will kill us. They killed everyone else." Daniel did not know who the Dominion was. He did not care. Right now, all he saw was a wounded mother and a frightened child. "Can you walk?" he asked. The woman tried to stand but collapsed. Her legs could not hold her weight. "I will carry you," Daniel said. "Both of you. My home is not far." The woman grabbed his arm. Her grip was weak, but her eyes were desperate. "Why would you help us?" she asked. "You do not know us. You owe us nothing." Daniel did not have a good answer. He had asked himself the same question many times during the war. Why did he always run toward the danger? Why could he never just walk away? Because you need help, he said simply. That is enough. He lifted the child first. The little girl was light, and she wrapped her arms around his neck without a word. Then he helped the woman to her feet and supported her weight with his other arm. Together, they made their way out of the burning ship. The walk back to the truck was slow. The woman was in pain, and Daniel had to stop several times to let her rest. The child never spoke. She just held on to Daniel and watched him with wide, scared eyes. When they reached the truck, Daniel placed them both in the back seat. He gave the woman a blanket and told her to press it against her wound to stop the bleeding. What is your name? He asked. The woman hesitated. Vela, she said finally. I am called Vela. This is my daughter, Kira. I am Daniel. Vela nodded weakly. Thank you, Daniel, she said. Thank you for not leaving us to die. Daniel said nothing. He got into the driver's seat and started the engine. As he drove back toward his farmhouse, he looked in the mirror at his passengers. The little girl had fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder. Vela was watching the sky through the window, her glowing eyes full of fear. Daniel did not know what he had gotten himself into. He did not know who was chasing them or why. But he knew one thing for certain. He was not going to let anyone hurt them. When they arrived at the farmhouse, Daniel carried them inside one at a time. He placed the child on his bed and helped the mother onto the couch. Then he opened his medical kit and began the work. The woman's wound was not as bad as it looked. Head wounds always bled a lot. He cleaned it carefully and applied a bandage. The child had some bruises, but nothing serious. When he was finished, Vela looked up at him. We cannot stay here long, she said. They will find us. They always find us. We will worry about that tomorrow, Daniel said. Tonight, you need to rest. Vela shook her head. You do not understand. The Dominion does not stop. They destroyed my entire world. They killed my husband. They killed my family. They will destroy this place too if they find us here. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then we better make sure they do not find you, he said. He turned off the lights and sat down in a chair by the window. Outside, the burning wreckage of the ship lit up the horizon. Somewhere out there, enemies were searching for the two aliens sleeping in his home. Daniel checked his rifle and settled in for a long night. He had spent years running from the galaxy's problems. But tonight, the galaxy had come to him. And whether he liked it or not, he was not going to run away this time. Weeks passed and life on the farm settled into a new routine. Daniel worked the fields during the day, and Vela helped him. She was not strong enough for heavy labor, but she learned quickly. She fed the animals, collected eggs, and tended the garden. Kira followed Daniel everywhere. At first, she watched him from a distance, hiding behind her mother whenever he looked at her. But slowly, day by day, she grew braver. One morning, Daniel was repairing a fence when he felt a tug on his sleeve. He looked down and saw Kira standing beside him. She was holding a tool in her small blue hands, offering it to him. Thank you, Daniel said. Kira did not speak, but she smiled. It was the first smile he had seen from her. From that day on, she became his shadow. She watched him fix machines, plant seeds, and care for the animals. She did not talk much, but Daniel did not mind. He had never been good with words either. One evening, they were walking back to the farmhouse when Kira pointed at the creek that ran through the property. Fish? She asked softly. It was only one word, but it was the first time she had spoken to him. Daniel stopped and looked at the water. Yes, he said. There are fish in there. Do you want to catch some? Kira nodded eagerly. The next morning, Daniel made 2 simple fishing poles from branches and string. He took Kira down to the creek and showed her how to bait a hook. She was clumsy at first, and she lost several hooks in the water. But she did not give up. After an hour, her pole bent sharply. Kira gasped and almost dropped it. "Hold on," Daniel said. "Pull slowly. Let it tire itself out." Kira did as he said. Her small arms shook with effort, but she kept pulling. Finally, a silverfish broke the surface. It was not big, but to Kira, it might as well have been a whale. She laughed. It was a beautiful sound, bright and clear. Daniel had not heard laughter like that in years. It made him remember why he had become a medic in the first place. Not to fight wars, but to save lives. To give people a chance to laugh again. Vela was watching from the porch. When Daniel looked up at her, he saw tears running down her face. That night, they ate the fish for dinner. Kira was so proud that she could barely sit still. She told her mother every detail of the catch, her words tumbling out faster than she could control them. After dinner, Vela helped Kira wash up and put her to bed. Then she came outside to join Daniel on the porch. He was sitting in his usual chair, watching the stars. "She has not laughed since her father died," Vela said quietly. "That was almost a year ago. I tried everything to make her happy, but nothing worked. And then you took her fishing." Daniel shrugged. "Kids like fishing. It is more than that." Vela sat down beside him. "You have given her something I could not. Safety, stability, a reason to be a child again." Daniel did not know how to respond. He was not good at accepting praise. "How did he die?" he asked. "A father." Vela's expression darkened. "The Dominion attacked our palace. We tried to escape together, but they caught us. They killed him in front of us. Made us watch." Her voice was flat, as if she had told this story so many times that the words no longer had meaning. "They were going to kill me too, but my guards created a distraction. Kira and I escaped. We have been running ever since." Daniel felt anger burning in his chest. What kind of monsters would kill a man in front of his daughter? "I am sorry," he said. "So am I." Vela looked up at the stars. "My husband was a good man. He was kind and gentle. He believed that we could negotiate with the Dominion. He thought if we offered them enough, they would leave us in peace. He was wrong. Yes, he was wrong. The Dominion does not want peace. They want power, and they do not care how many people they have to kill to get it." They sat in silence for a while. The night was cool, and the wind carried the smell of wheat and grass. "Among my people," Vela said eventually, "there is a tradition. When someone saves your life, you owe them a debt that can never be repaid. You are bound to them forever. They call it the bond of protection." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "I do not want you to owe me anything. I know. That is what makes you different." She turned to look at him. "On my world, nobles protected commoners because it was expected, because it gave them power and status. But you protect us for no reason at all. You gain nothing from this. You only risk your own life." "I already told you why," Daniel said. "Because you needed help. Is that really the only reason?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his life before the farm. The wars, the death, the friends he had lost. "During the war," he said slowly, "I watched a lot of people die. Good people. People who deserved to live. And every time I wondered why I survived, and they did not. I never found an answer." He looked down at his hands. "After the war, I came here to forget. I wanted to pretend that none of it had happened. But you cannot forget. The memories follow you. They wake you up at night. They remind you of everyone you could not save." He turned to face Vela. "Maybe I help you because I could not help them. Maybe this is my way of balancing the scales. I do not know." He shook his head. "All I know is that when I saw you and your daughter in that ship, I could not walk away. I did not have a choice." Vela reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cool and smooth. "You did have a choice," she said. Everyone has a choice. Most people choose to look away. You chose to help. She squeezed his hand gently. That is why I trust you. Not because you are strong or brave. Because you are good. Daniel did not feel good. He felt tired and scared and uncertain. But he did not pull his hand away. I cannot promise I will be able to protect you, he said. The Dominion is powerful. I am just one man. One man can make a difference, Vela said. One man already has. She stood up and walked to the door. Thank you, Daniel, for everything. She went inside, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Daniel sat on the porch until late into the night. He watched the stars and thought about the future. The Dominion would come eventually. He knew that. And when they came, he would have to fight. He was not sure he could win. The odds were against him. But he would try. For Vela, for Kira, for the chance to balance those scales. Inside the farmhouse, he heard Kira laughing in her sleep. It was a soft sound, barely audible, but it filled him with something he had not felt in years. Hope. Maybe that was enough. Maybe hope was all anyone ever needed. Daniel picked up his rifle and began his nightly patrol. The Dominion was out there somewhere, searching. But tonight, on this little farm on the edge of nowhere, a princess and her daughter were safe, and Daniel intended to keep it that way. 3 days passed. Daniel watched over his guests and tended to their wounds. The little girl, who was healing fast. Children were strong like that. But her mother, Vela, was taking longer. The crash had hurt her more than she admitted. During the first 2 days, Vela barely spoke. She slept most of the time, waking only to check on her daughter and to eat the simple food Daniel prepared. Kira stayed close to her mother, never wandering far from her side. On the third night, Daniel was sitting at his kitchen table cleaning his rifle when Vela walked in. She moved slowly, one hand pressed against the wall for support. But her eyes were clear and she looked stronger than before. May I sit? She asked. Daniel nodded toward the chair across from him. How are you feeling? He asked. Better. Thanks to you. She lowered herself into the chair with a small wince. You have been very kind. Most would have left us to die. Daniel shrugged. Most people are not as bad as you think. Vela smiled sadly. You would be surprised. She watched him work on his rifle for a moment. That is a military weapon, she said. You were a soldier. I was a medic, Daniel said. But yes, I was in the military. A long time ago. You have seen war. I have. Vela nodded slowly. Then you understand what it means to lose everything. Daniel put down his rifle and looked at her. Why are they hunting you? He asked. The Dominion. What do they want? Vela was quiet for a long moment. She looked down at her hands, and Daniel noticed they were trembling. I am a princess, she said finally. Or I was. My people were called the Silurians. We had a small empire near the edge of the galaxy. We were peaceful. We focused on art, philosophy, science. We had no great military. She paused, gathering her thoughts. The Dominion is a coalition of warlords. They conquer and enslave. 10 years ago, they came to our system. We tried to negotiate. We offered them trade, resources, anything they wanted. But they did not want trade. They wanted our extinction. Why? Daniel asked. Vela touched her chest. Our bloodline. The royal family of Silor carries ancient genetic codes. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors built powerful technology. The secrets to that technology are locked in our blood. The Dominion wants those secrets, so they need you alive. No. Vela shook her head. They need my blood. They do not need me alive. They have already killed my parents, my siblings, my husband. Everyone who shared my bloodline. I am the last adult. Kira is the last child. Daniel felt a cold anger growing in his chest. He had seen evil during the war. He had seen soldiers do terrible things to innocent people. But hunting a child for her blood was something else entirely. "What about the Galactic Council?" he asked. "Did you ask them for help?" Vela laughed bitterly. "The Council does not care. To them, we are a small species on the edge of nowhere. The Dominion is powerful. They control trade routes, resources, weapons. The Council does not want to anger them over a handful of refugees, so they turned you away. Everyone turned us away. We fled from system to system, begging for shelter. Every world told us the same thing. They were sorry for our suffering, but they could not risk war with the Dominion." She looked at Daniel with her glowing violet eyes. "Do you know how many worlds we visited before we came here?" 14. 14 different species. All of them refused us. Some would not even let us land. Daniel said nothing. He knew how the galaxy worked. Everyone was afraid. Everyone protected themselves first. "Why did you come to a human colony?" he asked. "We are not powerful. We are one of the youngest species in the galaxy." Vela leaned forward. "Because you are different," she said. "I have heard stories about humans. Your species is young, yes. You do not have the largest fleets or the most advanced technology. But you have something the other species do not have. What is that? You fight for each other. You do not abandon the weak." She reached across the table and touched his hand. "I heard a story once about a human colony that was attacked by raiders. The colony had no military. They were farmers, like you. But when the raiders came, the farmers did not run. They stood and fought. And when other human ships heard their distress signal, they came from across the sector to help. Not because they had to, because they chose to." Daniel remembered that story. It had happened on a colony called Providence about 15 years ago. He had not been there, but everyone in the military had heard about it. "I thought," Vela continued, "if there was one species in the galaxy that might show us mercy, it would be humans. I was not sure, but I had no other options." She pulled her hand back and looked at him. "I was right to come here. You saved us. A stranger saved us when our own allies would not." Daniel was uncomfortable with her gratitude. He did not feel like a hero. He had just done what anyone should have done. "I am just one man," he said. "I cannot fight the Dominion alone." "I am not asking you to fight them," Vela said. "I am asking you to let us stay. Just for a little while. Until I can find another way." Daniel thought about it. His life was simple here. Quiet. Safe. Taking in these refugees would change everything. The Dominion would come eventually. They would bring violence and death to his doorstep, but then he thought about Kira. He thought about the little girl sleeping in his bedroom, the girl who had not spoken a single word since she arrived. He thought about what would happen to her if he turned them away. "You can stay," he said, "as long as you need to." Vela's eyes filled with tears. She bowed her head. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." Daniel stood up and walked to the window. The night was clear, and he could see millions of stars. "In the morning, I will hide the wreckage of your ship," he said. "I will scatter the pieces and bury what I cannot move. It will buy us some time. And then?" Daniel turned to face her. "Then you tell me everything. Every detail about the Dominion. Their ships, their weapons, their tactics. If they are coming for you, I need to know how to stop them." Vela nodded. "I will tell you everything I know." Daniel picked up his rifle and headed for the door. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." He stepped outside into the cool night air. Above him, the stars seemed cold and distant. Somewhere out there, hunters were searching for the woman and child in his home. Daniel had spent years avoiding trouble. He had built a quiet life far from the galaxy's wars and politics. But trouble had found him anyway. He looked down at his hands. They were the hands of a farmer now, rough and calloused from honest work. But they had once been the hands of a soldier. He had hoped he would never need those skills again. He was wrong. Daniel walked to his barn and began pulling out old equipment. Sensors, traps, weapons he had kept hidden for years. If the Dominion was coming, he would be ready. He would protect them, no matter the cost. The alarm woke Daniel at 3 in the morning. He was out of bed before his eyes were fully open, his hand already reaching for the rifle beside his pillow. The sensors he had placed around the property were screaming. Something big had entered the atmosphere. Multiple contacts. He ran to the window and looked up at the sky. He saw them immediately. 3 bright streaks of fire cutting through the darkness. Landing craft. The Dominion had found them. Daniel moved fast. He had prepared for this day. Every trap, every weapon, every escape route had been planned in advance. But planning and reality were different things. His heart was pounding as he ran to wake Vela. She was already awake. She stood in the doorway of her room, holding Kira against her chest. The child was crying softly. "They are here," Vela said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were filled with terror. "I know. We need to move." Daniel led them to the basement. He had spent weeks reinforcing it, adding steel plates and hidden exits. It was not perfect, but it would hold for a while. "Stay here," he said. "Do not come out no matter what you hear. If I do not come back in 2 hours, use the tunnel. It leads to the forest. There is a vehicle hidden there. Take it and run." Vela grabbed his arm. "Let me surrender," she said. "They want me, not you. If I give myself up, they might spare you and Kira." Daniel shook his head. "They will kill all of us. You know that. Then let me fight with you." "No, your daughter needs you." He looked down at Kira. The little girl was staring at him with wide, frightened eyes. "I need you to protect her. Can you do that?" Vela hesitated, then nodded slowly. Daniel knelt down so he was at Kira's level. He reached out and put his hand on her head. "I have to go away for a little while," he said gently. "But I will come back. I promise." Kira grabbed his hand and held it tight. "Come back," she whispered. It was only 2 words, but they hit Daniel harder than anything he had ever heard. He felt his throat tighten. "I will," he said. He stood up and headed for the stairs. At the door, he turned back one last time. 2 hours, he said to Vela. "Then run." He closed the door behind him and sealed it shut. Outside, the night was chaos. The landing craft had touched down in the fields, crushing his crops beneath their weight. Daniel could see figures moving in the darkness. They were tall and heavily armored, carrying weapons that glowed with energy. The Dominion hunters. Vela had told him about them. Elite soldiers bred for one purpose, to kill. They were stronger than humans, faster, and better equipped. A single hunter could destroy an entire squad of normal soldiers. There were 12 of them. Daniel smiled grimly. He had faced worse odds during the war. He had survived when everyone said he would die. The Dominion hunters did not know what they were dealing with. He moved to his first position, a hidden trench behind the barn. From there, he could see the entire approach to the farmhouse. He raised his rifle and waited. The hunters spread out in a standard search pattern. They were professionals. They moved with precision and discipline, but they were also arrogant. They expected no resistance from a simple farmer on a backwater colony. That was their first mistake. Daniel let the first 2 hunters pass his position. Then he opened fire. His rifle cracked twice, and both hunters fell. He was moving before they hit the ground, racing to his second position. The remaining hunters reacted instantly. They took cover and returned fire. Energy bolts screamed through the air, burning holes in the barn wall. But Daniel was already gone. He had turned his farm into a maze of death. Every fence, every ditch, every building had been prepared. Tripwires triggered explosions. Hidden pits swallowed hunters whole. Automated turrets that he had built from scrap metal fired from unexpected angles. One by one, the hunters fell, but they were learning. They adapted to his tactics. They started moving in pairs, covering each other. They found and disabled his turrets. They avoided his traps. Daniel was hit twice. The first shot grazed his shoulder. The second burned through his leg. He gritted his teeth and kept fighting. Pain was just information. It told you that you were still alive. By the time the sun began to rise, 8 hunters were dead. But 4 remained, and Daniel was running out of tricks. He retreated to the farmhouse, leaving a trail of blood behind him. His rifle was empty. He had 1 pistol left with 6 rounds. His leg was barely holding him up. The 4 remaining hunters surrounded the building. Their commander stepped forward. He was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with dark green skin and glowing red eyes. "Human," the commander called out. "You have fought well, better than we expected. But it is over. Give us the princess, and we will let you live." Daniel laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. "You think I am stupid?" He shouted back. "You will kill us all anyway. That is what you do." The commander paused. "You are correct," he admitted. "But your death can be quick or slow. The choice is yours." Daniel checked his pistol. 6 rounds. 4 hunters. Bad odds. But he had made a promise to a little girl. "Come and get me," he said. The hunters attacked. They smashed through the windows and doors, filling the room with chaos and violence. Daniel fired his pistol until it was empty. 2 more hunters fell. Then a massive fist slammed into his chest, and he flew backward into the wall. He lay on the floor, gasping for breath. The commander stood over him, a blade of pure energy humming in his hand. "Impressive," the commander said, "for a human. But this is the end." He raised the blade. Daniel reached for his boot and pulled out a small knife. It was nothing against the commander's armor, but it was all he had left. 1 human? The commander sneered. "You cannot protect them forever." Daniel looked up at him with blood in his eyes. "Maybe not forever," he said, "but long enough." He threw the knife. It was not aimed at the commander. It was aimed at the gas line behind him. The line that Daniel had rigged with explosives hours ago. The explosion tore through the room. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was lying in the ruins of his kitchen. The commander was dead, his body torn apart by the blast. The last hunter was crawling toward the door, badly wounded. Daniel grabbed a piece of broken metal and dragged himself across the floor. The hunter turned to face him, raising a weapon. Daniel was faster. When it was over, Daniel lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. His body was broken. His home was destroyed. But the hunters were dead. All of them. He had won. He thought about Vela and Kira, waiting in the basement. He had promised to come back. He intended to keep that promise. With the last of his strength, he crawled toward the basement door. Vela heard the silence first. After hours of explosions and gunfire, the quiet was almost more terrifying. She held Kira close and waited, counting the seconds. Then she heard footsteps. Slow and uneven. Someone was approaching the basement door. She picked up the weapon Daniel had left her and aimed it at the entrance. If it was a hunter, she would not surrender. She would fight until the end. The door opened. Daniel stood in the doorway, covered in blood and ash. He was barely standing, leaning against the frame for support. But he was alive. "It is over," he said. "They are all dead." Vela dropped the weapon and ran to him. She caught him just as his legs gave out. Together, they sank to the floor. "You fool," she whispered. "You impossible, stubborn fool." Daniel tried to smile, but the pain was too much. Told you I would come back." Kira ran over and threw her arms around both of them. She was crying, but they were tears of relief, not fear. "I knew you would come back," she said. "I knew it." Daniel put his hand on her head. "Always," he said. "I promise." Then he passed out. The next few days were a blur. Vela used the emergency beacon Daniel had hidden in the barn to send a distress signal. Within 48 hours, a human patrol ship arrived in orbit. The soldiers who came to the surface were shocked by what they found. 12 dead Dominion hunters. An entire elite squad, wiped out by a single farmer. They brought Daniel to the medical bay of their ship. The doctors worked on him for hours. He had lost a lot of blood. His leg was badly damaged. 3 of his ribs were broken. But he was alive. When Daniel woke up, a man in a military uniform was standing beside his bed. "Captain Daniel Harper," the man said. "Retired. Combat medic, special operations. 14 confirmed kills during the war. 3 medals for bravery." Daniel blinked. "How do you know all that?" The man smiled. "I am Admiral Nathan Cole. When we received your distress signal, I looked up your file. Impressive record. Though I think your count is considerably higher now." Daniel said nothing. "The woman and the child," the Admiral continued. "They told us everything. Princess Vela of the Solarian Empire. The last surviving royals. And you protected them against a full hunter squad." "I did what anyone would do." Admiral Cole shook his head. "No, Captain. That is not what anyone would do. Most people would have turned them away. Most people would have hidden and hoped the hunters passed them by. You chose to fight, alone, against impossible odds." He pulled out a small device and set it on the table. "The Galactic Council has requested that we turn the princess over to the Dominion. They say it is a matter of internal politics. They do not want a war." Daniel felt cold anger rising in his chest. "And what do you say?" Admiral Cole smiled. "I say the Galactic Council can go to hell." He pressed a button on the device. A holographic display appeared, showing a map of human space. "I have already contacted High Command. They agree with me. Princess Vela and her daughter will be granted asylum on Earth. Any attempt to harm them will be considered an act of war against the human species." Daniel stared at him. "You would go to war for 2 refugees?" "We would go to war for the right thing." The Admiral leaned forward. "That is what makes us human, Captain. We do not abandon the weak. We do not look away when innocent people are suffering. It is not in our nature." He stood up and walked to the door. "The princess asked to see you. I told her you needed rest, but she was very insistent." Daniel nodded. "Send her in." A moment later, Vela entered the room. Kira was holding her hand. They both looked tired but healthy. Vela sat down beside his bed. "The Admiral told me what humanity is going to do," she said. "I cannot believe it. An entire species is willing to risk war to protect us." "That is what we do," Daniel said. Vela shook her head in wonder. "My people spent years asking for help. 14 worlds rejected us. But humans, the youngest species in the galaxy, are the ones who said yes." She took his hand. "I was right about you. About all of you." Kira climbed onto the bed and curled up beside Daniel. She was not scared anymore. She was not hiding. She was just a child, safe and warm. "The Admiral offered me a home on Earth," Vela said. "A place where we would be protected. I thanked him, but I made a different request." Daniel looked at her. "What request?" "I asked if we could stay on New Montana. At the farm." She paused. "If you would allow it." Daniel was silent for a long moment. He thought about his quiet life, his peaceful routine. All of that was gone now. The farm was destroyed. The Dominion knew where he lived, but he also thought about Kira's laughter. He thought about Vela's smile. He thought about what it felt like to have a purpose again. "The farm needs a lot of repairs," he said finally. "I could use some help with the harvest." Vela smiled. It was the most beautiful thing Daniel had ever seen. "Then we will stay," she said. 3 months later, the Galactic Council received a formal transmission from Earth. The message was broadcast across every channel. To every species in the galaxy, the human ambassador stood before the council and delivered a simple statement. Humanity hereby announces that Princess Vela of the Solarian Empire and her daughter, Kira, are under our protection. They have been granted citizenship and are now part of the human family. Any attempt to harm them will be considered an act of war against humanity. We will respond with full force. The Dominion representatives stood up in outrage. "This is an internal matter. You have no right to interfere." The human ambassador smiled calmly. "You are correct. We have no legal obligation to protect them. But we have something more important than obligation. We have conscience. Humanity does not abandon those who ask for our help. The princess and her daughter are family now." The message spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Refugees on 100 worlds heard the news. Species that have given up hope began to whisper. The humans would help. The humans would protect. On a quiet farm on New Montana, Daniel sat on his rebuilt porch, watching the sunset. Vela was beside him, reading a book. Kira was playing with the farm animals in the yard, laughing as a baby goat followed her around. The farmhouse was new. Human volunteers had helped rebuild it, stronger than before. The fields were growing again. Life was returning to normal. Kira ran up to the porch and tugged on Daniel's sleeve. "Can we go fishing tomorrow?" she asked. Daniel smiled. "Of course." She hugged him quickly and ran back to play. Vela looked at Daniel with soft eyes. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." Daniel shook his head. "You already thanked me. I will thank you every day for the rest of my life." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one. Somewhere out there, the Dominion was still powerful. The galaxy was still dangerous. The future was still uncertain. But on this little farm on the edge of human space, a family had found each other. A broken soldier had found purpose. A princess had found safety. A child had found home. And that was enough. That was everything.